looks like we're live in some places. So if you guys can see us, we are attempting to go live in multiple areas, so please be patient with us. Got a few other streams going here. All right, I think we can get to going live on Instagram here as well. I think we're good to go. All right.
Lots of technology.
Yes, lots of technology, but I think we're good. I'm super, super excited to have you. This is Dr. Cliff Robertson with Warrior Counseling Works. And obviously, those of you who have joined can see that we are talking about the psychology of horse-human healing, which I am very, very excited to be talking about. Do you want to give a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure, I can do that. Dr. Cliff, or you can just call me Cliff. I'm good with that. I'm not big on titles. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I served during Desert Storm. I was an air traffic controller in the Navy on an aircraft carrier. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a certified equine-assisted therapist, organizational development, all those fun things. You could stack up whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just, how can we make a difference in the world is what really matters. And I run an organization, as you introduced, Warrior Counseling Works. We're also known on different channels as Warrior Equine. And, we work primarily with veterans suffering from PTSD related to their combat, time in combat. We also work with at-risk youth. And we've started another segment as well that we'll talk about later.
Awesome. Great. Well, great introduction. I kind of want to dive into maybe PTSD specifically and
Okay.
how do horses impact that and begin to heal that? And is there a way that you track that progress? Is there, there's different kinds of PTSD. So I'm curious if there's different ways that horses can help people who've maybe experienced PTSD in a different way. Let's kind of dive into maybe some of the science here.
Okay, love that. Let's begin with the way we track it first, then we'll go back to the first part. The way we track it is pure psychological assessments. We do an assessment at the beginning where they kind of tell us where they are, and then we do an assessment after our 9 to 10 weeks of working with them. That's how. That's the only effective means of really tracking it. Self-reporting. How are you doing? Nobody's asking them those questions. They're seeing them on the paper and answering them. And so far, we've seen, between, depending upon the individual, 70 to sometimes higher than 80% reduction in symptoms related to PTSD. But let's go back to the first part of the question. How do horses help with PTSD? Part of that question is what are the different types? There's just PTSD. There's prolonged PTSD, prolonged exposure, and there's also combat related PTSD. And obviously in their names, it's pretty easy to figure out what they mean. Prolonged exposure is they were in it for a long period of time, or they continue to go back, which is actually a way of, a lot of veterans, used going back, redeploying, volunteering again to go back was a way of self-medicating. Because that way they were controlling their circumstances. Combat PTSD is, they saw something horrific, tragic. A lot of times it's combined with it's called moral injury. They were asked to do something, or they saw something that went against their moral code. And we've been seeing that since the beginning of time in war. It's just never really been identified that way. But how do veterans and horses connect? Well, one of the key words in that is connect, because a lot of times with PTSD, people don't want to connect. they don't, it's an idea of trust. It's an idea of whether, maybe not necessarily trusting you. It's about, they don't necessarily trust themselves anymore as well. But as you know, connecting with a horse is a whole different level, because they have to be willing to accept you. And, they can sense with their, with their interior radar systems that they have to, with, their prey animal instincts, they can sense how you're doing from across the arena. And in doing that, they kind of know pretty quickly if you're friend or foe. And what's really cool though is, as they identify that, and their ears go from being laid back to being forward, or doing whatever they're doing, it kind of eases the tension, and people are able to connect and get close and begin to groom and do the other things that we do. And before you know it, they've gone from, well, let me just give you one example. There was one guy that had not only PTSD, but he had schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. And most of that was actually considered to be drug induced, because as a way of coping with PTSD and all that, they used drugs to the point where it induced additional mental health disorders. When they first came to the round pen, they didn't want to get in. In fact, they didn't want to sign our liability waiver, because I'm going to be outside anyway. So why do I need that? Well, sign it anyway if you would, just to humor me, okay? But the next time, it was so interesting. The very next time we were out there, they came into the round pen. The person we had working with them had them lifting up a hoof on one of the more difficult horses we have, which I actually call my favorite. That's another story for another day. She's a paint horse, so she's a little crazy, but she's actually the inspiration for our logo. That it's actually it's actually her. I always call her my favorite. Her name is Shima, which is Navajo for mother, because we also have her daughter, who the ranch hands call Paquito Loco. But again, we digress. We digress there. So anyway, but he was lifting up, the horse's hoof and cleaning it out, when before he didn't even want to get close. And then he's also backing her up and, leading her around, the area where, and genuinely connecting. Whereas before, like I said, he didn't want to. Some of the clinical staff at one of the places we work with tell us that in a lot of, for a lot of these guys, this is the only clinical modality, in other words, way that, that clinicians work. It's getting through to some of these guys. And it's because of that capacity to connect, that judgment-free, that don't care where you've been, what you've done, how bad you've messed up in life. Don't care. It doesn't matter. We're all about right here, right now. And that really shines through with the horses and the men. I mean, they really begin to see it and sense it and feel it. So, that's kind of the beginning. When you begin with that connection, and of course, there's something else going on too that, it's kind of under the, it's kind of out of sight and all that, is the, electromagnetic field that the horses give off from their internal systems, that, they kind of have that, just kind of draws people in, or can repel someone too, but it really draws them in, and, their heart rate goes down, their blood pressure goes down. And, what's interesting is when you see it, when you see their breathing begin to match up with the horse as they're walking them.
Wow.
And they're in step with the horse. And now all of a sudden, they can't wait till we come back next time. What are we doing next time?
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So you really see it. And there's some more to it. And we can, one last thing about how it works. One of the things that we do, which is really fascinating, is sometimes we'll just have, we won't be doing anything. We'll just say, okay, I want you to go hang out with the horses. I want you to see them as a potential metaphor for something significant in your life. Just kind of go out there and be with them. And sometimes the stories that come back from that are, they bring the individual to tears, but it'll bring you to tears too, because they'll see, and they'll start bringing up things that they hadn't talked to anybody about, and it just like it cracks them open, and it really helps to get all that toxic trauma out.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it is really amazing. Just, I've been around horses since I was 6 and couldn't really put everything you're saying into words of just how, when you're interacting with them, like you said, breathing slows down. I feel calmer. I always call it my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's true science behind it, which is just cool to reiterate that.
Well, there is, and what's interesting as well is, we've done some collaboration with like Columbia University, and they did and they did a neuroscience study that basically showed that in the work that they were doing, which is similar to what we do, it was actually creating new neural pathways to help people overcome challenges and issues, and it was, in other words, literally rewiring the brain, which it still just blows me away. I just tell them, hey, listen, this, you can call it therapy if you want. We're just gonna go hang out with the horses for a little while, and and we take them from, hello, this is a horse,
Yeah.
safety and all that, because some of them have never been around horses before. I
Yeah.
mean, literally never. We're in Texas and they've never been around a horse. It seems like like an impossibility. Of course, they're not all from Texas. They could be from literally anywhere in the country, but we're in Texas, so you got to be a cowboy, right? No, I'm kidding. Anyway, but gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It just went away.
It was starting from them learning about what a horse is, and then moving on from there.
Oh yeah. We go from there to, the therapy, and then therapeutic horsemanship to therapeutic riding.
Oh, awesome.
I mean, we take them all the way from nothing to where they can, where they can do a side pass and open a gate.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, yeah.
How long typically? I mean, I know it's person to person dependent, but I'm curious if there's like an amount of time on average it takes for someone who's kind of hesitant or worried about the horses to warm up to them.
That's a really good question. In a previous group, because we work with quite a few at a time. There was one guy that was just like that guy I mentioned, but he didn't warm up as fast. I would say the first 2 or 3 sessions, he was still, arm's length, hold the horse, brush the horse. Okay, 1, 2, 3, I'm done. And then what really kind of broke him open was when we started, working on putting a saddle on.
Oh, wow.
And, we started talking through all the things that, how saddle and the girth and the all the different pieces, how that can relate as a metaphor to life, and the things we need to use, how we can use it to prepare ourselves for the future. Like, we want to make sure we brush the horse's back before we put the saddle pad on, because what happens if there's something underneath there? Well, how does that relate to life? The horse may get spooked, the horse may get hurt, the horse may hurt us because of it. But what do we need to be doing to make sure before we start to step out to kind of clear our decks? So he really began to connect there. It took him a while. It took him 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But once he connected, here's what's really cool, because this was we finished up with him just before Mother's Day, and his mom came to visit him and told the clinical director that was the first time in 10 years that he had hugged his mom.
Wow. That's super powerful.
I mean, 10 years. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Of course, for some, it's almost automatic. There was one of my favorite stories is a guy named Travis, and if he hears this, he's on Instagram and social, so he might. But I think it was the first session. He was helping us at the end load up the horses, and the horse put his head over his shoulder and kind of kind of tapped him on the heart a little bit, kind of pulled him in, and
Oh my
he was
God.
done. He was done. Before that, he didn't really talk much. He was kind of that stoic. He'd been through a lot. But now he's talking about wanting to do what we do to help others. So,
Oh, that's really sweet. I wanted to ask actually about the horses that you choose to be a part of your program and what makes a horse special enough to do that, or do you want the ones that are a little bit more challenging, or do you want a super, friendly horse? What does that look like?
it's really interesting you asked that, because a lot of people think they all need to be older and they all need to be, almost halfway broken down or whatever. But honestly, you really need a mix. I mean, you need some that are going to be easy to work with. You need some that are going to be a challenge. It's kind of like we have a off the track thoroughbred, and we were using we were doing the blue tarp, where we would ask them to lead the horse over the blue tarp, and he would not do it. He would not do it. In fact, we'd fold it up. He was a challenge. We have the paint horse that can be very difficult at times. I mean, when she gets it in her head that she doesn't want to do something, it's not happening. But that's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, now what do we do? Now what do we do? Maybe today this isn't the challenge that we overcome. Maybe we go on to the next one, and that's okay. We don't have to win every time. We don't have to win. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you still want, you want the easy ones too, because it can't all be a challenge, but you need some wins. And so we've got a good mixture. We don't want them to be dangerous, obviously, like my 2-year-old Paint. She's not getting out in there with them. She's just not. I mean, a bird coming into the arena and chirping can set her off. So no.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we're not crazy, but challenging is good.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking when you were talking about the horses earlier, of just like they start with pinning their ears and then kind of progresses from there, because otherwise it's too easy, right?
Right. And if it's too easy, what do you learn from that? I mean, how do you grow?
Yeah. Seems like just like life, where there are the easy ones, but then there's some challenges along the way. Makes a lot of sense. So another question. Was there, you have so many moments, but I'm curious if there's like a specific moment that made you realize that equine-assisted therapy could be so transformative?
When my when my good friend Caesar Cantu first brought it to me, that because we were running a veterans homeless shelter at the time, and he said, I really want to do this. And I thought, that sounds great. I've been around horses off and on all my life. My grandfather raised and trained cutting horses before it was the thing to be doing. It was way back. I mean, back when Elvis was still, alive and doing concerts kind of time. So way back. To be honest, I didn't have any idea. I remember horses way back then, but I just loved being around them. It was fun. It was good. But when he went through the training, brought the horse, brought a round pen up there to the shelter, and there was this one guy that we had been working with in traditional counseling, and he was about to be, discharged because he couldn't hold a job. He'd failed the last 3 or 4 drug tests and wasn't making any progress, wasn't doing anything we'd asked him to do. So he was about to be discharged. I mean, it had been 5 or 6 months and no progress. And Caesar said, well, let me bring him out to hang out with the horses for a minute. And within 30 minutes, he was having a breakdown and a breakthrough. I mean, talking about the trauma in the past, talking about everything he'd done. And after that, everything got for him, everything changed. It was that breakthrough, that moment. And that really convinced me that, we need to be doing more of it. And then meeting other people who trained therapists, they were telling me that they don't do traditional therapy anymore, even though they'd been doing it for 20 years prior. They only do equine because there's they were saying, now I don't have any science to back this up other than their own testimony, they've been at it for a while, saying that, there's an 8-to-1 difference.
Wow.
It takes 8 sessions to get the value of 1 session with the horse. So I can't say I have those kind of numbers because I've never really kept up, but I know that I've seen some people for several years, and I've seen breakthroughs in 8 to 10 weeks. I mean, I've seen a breakthrough with a horse, get this, where, occasionally we've got an organization that we collaborate with called Paloma Trails, and they bring out minis.
Oh,
We have one of our weeks where we do minis, which is called the Therapy of Fun. And this last time we had 8 minis and 10 guys with each group. So it was almost everybody had their own mini. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome.
But part of it is we have them do the the mini, what I call the mini walk, where they pick a horse and they walk down the it's probably 100 yards down to the main entrance and back. And their mission is simple. They need to tell that miniature horse their greatest challenge and their greatest fear moving forward in life.
Oh.
They just have to say it loud enough where the horse could actually hear them. They don't have to tell me when they're done. If they want to talk about it, they can. But it's like every time we do that, at least one of those guys is going to have a breakthrough. They're going to have that moment where they got it out loud, and even though the horse can't talk back to them, they actually feel like, and they'll tell you that they feel like they were heard. Mm. And it helped begin that process of talking about it. And when you're talking about it, you're healing.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I have to imagine that that's a lot of the times the first time maybe they've ever even said anything out loud about a situation or circumstance.
Yeah, most of the time it's something they've never said to anybody, right? And then they come back, and there's a couple. Not everybody, but there'll be some that'll come back and say, "Hey, this just happened. I can't believe I was walking down and talking with a miniature horse, and all of a sudden I'm crying."
Yeah.
Of course. Then we put that together with where they're driving a little cart, like a little one-person pink Barbie cart, and we make them do the Barbie wave.
That's great.
And we get them on video with it, but so there's evidence it happened.
That's incredible.
But they're having fun, they're laughing, and for some of these guys, it's it was difficult to get them to laugh.
Yeah.
But you can't help but laugh, when you see a miniature, jumping higher than they are tall.
Yeah.
And because they're running beside you, it's really kind of cool.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's really amazing. I'm curious. So I guess how does someone know if they're, sounds like, I mean, I'm just thinking like, wow, everyone should be involved in equine therapy. So how does someone know they're a fit for, your program specifically, or equine therapy in general?
Well, for our program specifically, we pretty much have what we refer to as a captive audience. We're working primarily with veteran shelters. So these guys live there, so they can't really escape us.
That was gonna be my follow-up, is how often are they doing equine-assisted therapy? Sounds
every
like
week.
A lot.
Every week.
Wow.
And so they can't really get away from us. And what's interesting is usually after the first week or two, they start to look forward to it.
Yeah.
And they've told us that it's the highlight of their week. For some people, they've told us that it's given them the motivation to stick with it.
Wow.
Which is, again, inspiring to us.
Yeah.
Because when it's 100 degrees outside and you're out there doing this, and no wind, it's like, why are we doing this again?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be challenging.
And then the at-risk youth, so is that kind of a separate program that you have?
It is. It is. We have horses that are stationed basically at a residential treatment center for foster care boys that are. I hate to say they're the worst of the worst, but they're not far from it. They're one step away from what we call juvenile jail.
Okay.
Long-term juvenile jail, not just juvenile detention, but juvenile jail.
Right.
And and it's interesting there. One of the very first kids I worked with, I was doing both traditional counseling and equine, and I sit down with him, and he starts to tell me the questions that I'm getting ready to ask him from my assessment that he does not have in front of him because he's been through it so many times.
Oh.
I mean, a smart kid, but still, he's been through it so many times, and then started giving me the range of answers that were available, and just everything. I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. So let's go out and let's get a couple of the guys to go out and see some of the horses, and we did. And when we were done, nobody wanted to leave, and there were a couple of them just kind of laying across the horse.
Wow.
Just kind of they found that place of peace. And some of these guys that were 15, 16, 17, and this is their 13th, 14th, or 15th year in the system.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of hard to get wrapped around, but it's real. Well, we've had some real success stories there too.
That's awesome. Do you find there's a difference in your approach to youth versus, I mean, I'm assuming veterans, you're not working with 16-year-olds. So I'm curious, like, is the approach any different, or is it really just transferable across?
No, you have to approach it, you have to approach it differently because, sometimes as adults, we have a little bit of a natural sense of fear. So there's certain things we're just not going to do. We're not going to just throw ourselves on top of a horse or run underneath it or between their legs or whatever. We're not going to do that. So you don't really have to say those things, to the veterans, but to the kids, you kind of do. And so it's just one of those things you kind of have to. From a safety perspective, the safety brief is very different. You're not just talking about just not being behind the horse without the horse knowing you're there.
Yeah.
You're talking about, okay, we're gonna stay safe, but we're actually able to make more progress with the veterans because of where they are. They're they tend to begin to engage in what they're seeing because, believe it or not, they've been deprived of the connectability less. So the connections come quicker.
Oh, interesting.
That comes a little quicker. It takes a little longer for us to be able to get to the same spot. I mean, so what we, like with the veterans, we've got a certain curriculum we're working through that we've created. We're going to try to do typically 2 to 3 different things we're going to try to do in our weekly sessions with them. Kind of depends what it is. It's different each one. But with the kids, we kind of walk out there and let's just kind of see where we are today.
Yeah.
And we're just going to feel our way through this, and we're going to introduce what we feel like we can, but we're not going to push it. We're not going to, because if we come with it, it's going to get blown up, and someone's going to get lost in the process. So let's just feel our way through it. So it is different. A lot of the same principles, just a different approach.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I would imagine that there's probably as you get older, you also want not that you don't want relief when you're a child, but you kind of don't understand exactly what you need or want. And I would figure that as you get older, you're like, I'm I'm really just looking for relief. And when you get that, it's like it's incredible.
It is. It is. You're right. You're right. It's the same but different.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it
Same
does.
principles, just whole different mindset, whole different approach.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about kind of the different steps in the process for, we'll talk about veterans specifically. What does like day one look like for someone versus, I don't want to say the end date, but
Sure.
even a question of how long are people typically in equine assisted therapy, or is it something they keep doing their entire life?
Well, um, great, great question again. Our program with the veterans is 10 weeks. So we're going to be working with them roughly 2.5 months. Sometimes, it extends beyond that because sometimes they'll want to, after we're finished, they'll want to come back, and because they're still there, they see us, and we always invite them out, come and hang out, and do whatever, we're good, because it never fails. They may need that in that moment. So what we're trying to do in doing that is normalizing being around horses for them.
Yeah.
And several people have gone back home and gotten involved with rescues or gotten involved with volunteering at a rescue shelter or at a place for kids or something. So they've gone back and gotten involved in that way, kind of again normalizing that it's good to be around it. But day one is usually really super simple. It is. We've got typically we've got 4 horses. If it's a day we don't have minis, minis could be like the other day we had 8. So, but typically we have 4 horses because we're working with up to 10 guys at a time, and we break them into individual. Sometimes it's 8, so that we got 2 people per horse. Sometimes it's one-on-one, and because we individualize our work with each individual anyway. But day one is really kind of an introduction. This is a horse. Here's the safety brief, but I want you to just go meet the horses. Safety brief, meet the horses. Here's some grooming stuff. Why don't you brush them, and just get to know them, and just see what it feels like to be around them. And that's probably the first. After we've kind of described what we're planning to do for the next 10 weeks, that's probably the first half of the time, and then we'll go inside and we'll do paperwork. But the real part about going inside, what we do is we'll have them share their story. We'll share our story as well.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing some of the stories you hear. Some are there after multiple failed suicide attempts, and it's yeah, you just feel the weight of the moment, weight of the responsibility. So yeah, so there's that. We're going from this is what a horse is, and let's hear your story about because we want to get to know them so that we can individualize the experiences for them moving forward.
Quick question about that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm curious if there are people who are hesitant to share, and if you run into issues with that, or do you find that people are willing to share because they're in an environment where people have experienced similar trauma?
Some people are just like a wide open book. They're wanting to get it out and deal with it, and others, I'm here because they made me. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, kind of thing.
Got it.
And they're not talking. And part of it is they don't necessarily trust us yet, and the other part is they don't necessarily trust themselves.
Mm-hmm.
One guy in a previous group, one of our won't say our first group, but one of our early groups, um, was like that. And by the time we were done, you couldn't shut him up,
Wow, that's amazing.
because it just slowly but surely opened him up. But yeah, but back to your question, so that's day one, and day 10 is typically what we call our 1 day immersive retreat, where we bring everybody to our the facility where we work at in Brenham. And for those of you that don't know, that's Brenham, Texas. Um, and we call the place Horse Heaven because it's a beautiful rolling hills ranch. We're blessed to be there. It's not ours. We just rent space there, but it's a beautiful place to be. Um, and uh, but we'll go from, like I said, this is a horse to um, our goal is for everybody that can, everybody that physically can and wants to be able to ride and to understand what all that means, be able to lead the horse through an obstacle course that includes going over the blue tarp, backing through a 90, stepping over obstacles, um, you know, weaving in and out, two people leading, one horse weaving in and out, doing a side pass from the ground. And then the next group, though, is going to, and opening a gate, from the back. But the next group is actually going to be doing all of those things also from a saddle. We're actually going to be taking them through, basically back through the obstacle course from the saddle, and which is going to be, some unique challenges too. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to that. We continue to sharpen our own saw, get better. Started out doing a lot of one-on-one work, um, and found that 2-on-1, two veterans, one facilitator or two facilitators, and so it ends up being kind of one-on-one. It really works well, and it gets because they kind of feed off each other, so it really kind of helps to elevate the work we do. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I have a couple questions that are coming in.
Okay.
I want to ask this one from Ali. Does insurance cover this for people who aren't in facilities, like people just seeing therapists, or how do you access this therapy as someone who's just out there?
Okay. Um, Insurance does not typically cover equine-assisted therapy very well. The therapist would need to be able to bill basically mainstream insurance for a regular therapy session, um, and that's how they do it. And they just simply use, equine as one of their modalities.
Mm.
But the challenge with that, and just speaking from someone who does this, um, the average typical therapy session for just a counselor and an individual talking is somewhere between 100 and 150. There are some people that are far more than that, but it's an exception.
Sure.
I want to say insurance typically pays 100 to 150, somewhere in there. But think about it from this perspective, and you understand that the cost of having horses.
Yeah.
You've got you've got a therapist that's typically at least $100 an hour. Then you've got a second person, an equine specialist, which is there for safety and there to help with the whole experience as well. So you've got two people, not one, and the equine specialist is $50 to $60 an hour. So that's 150. Then you got the cost of the horse. Then you got the facility where you are. So with working with other people, we figured out that a baseline cost for a session not anybody really making any any headway, is about $225, $250. And insurance is not paying that, even if you do it with a licensed therapist that's got insurance that they can do. So it's a challenge. One of the best things to do if this person is a veteran is to find a program that has some veteran related funding, so that they don't have to worry about chasing that down. Because that's a, I mean to get very far. I mean to think about it. If you're going to do, 8 to 10 sessions at 225, 250, whatever. I mean
Yeah,
that adds up quick.
absolutely. Yeah. It's tough when things are expensive that help us.
Yeah, and if that person would like to have a referral to someone in their area, they can just message you, and you can get that to me, or they can go to me direct, whatever. And I'm really good. I mean, I know a lot of people around the country. I have access to them, and I can refer them to someone in their area.
Yeah, oh, well, that's really nice. Maybe if you can tell just everyone how they can get in contact with you on here so that if they're listening, they can communicate with you, whether that's this person or maybe anyone who's listening who hasn't submitted a question.
Well, I mean, you can go to we're on Instagram with warrior.equine, and you can go there and you can send me a message there, and I'll respond usually within the day, usually within a couple hours. Or you can go to Facebook, or if that's where you are, you can go to Facebook and Warrior Counseling Works and message us there, and we'll respond quickly and find it out. Or you can send me an email at cliff@warriorequine.net.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of ways to connect today.
We have another question. It was actually going to be similar to my question, so I'll tie them together. From
Okay.
Brian, how do you fund the horses and this whole organization? And I want to follow that up with, I'm assuming that, some of the veterans are either have funding themselves or aren't paying for this out of pocket, but I could be wrong. So I'm curious how the organization works and yeah, how do you fund it?
It's challenging. The veterans pay us nothing. The facilities that we go to typically pay us nothing. So we survive based on grants and donors and sponsors. Um, that's how we fund it. We there's always in the horse world, there's always another expense that you don't have covered, and all that. So a lot of times you end up getting funded out what I refer to as back pocket national. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's as a nonprofit, which also means we're always broke.
Yeah.
Um, we write grants, and we put on fundraisers, and we do all the things we can to make sure we get there. But here's one of the things that we always kind of uh, really pride ourselves on is um, we're going to show up whether we have the money to do it or not. We're going to show up until we just can't. And I hope that day doesn't come, but it's real. I mean, there's been times when we've been down to, I don't know how we're going to do this week. And I'm a man of faith, so I can tell you that God's always provided. God's always made a way. And but yeah, I mean, it's tough. And so we rely on a lot of there's we do quite a bit of work on social media, and we've had some really strong donors come from that. And so we we rely on the goodwill of people that believe in our mission. And we post a lot of videos about our work, and you can see our horses, you can meet our horses. One in particular is really cool. I talked about him earlier. Wouldn't go over the blue tarp, but he will play soccer.
Oh, that's amazing. How cool.
He will play soccer. He will literally lift his front leg up and kick the ball out.
Oh my gosh.
And he figured that out himself. Those thoroughbreds are smart.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, if someone wants to help support your organization, what's the best way for them to do that? Is it donation? Is it getting involved? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I always tell people, time, talent, or treasure. If you have the capacity to get involved, that's great, because we love to have help. We've been able to serve more veterans because today we have more help, and it's not because we're paying more people, because we don't have any more money, than we had before, but we have more help, and we're able to do more, get more done. We've gone from a 20-person cohort to a 30-person cohort because we have more people helping. We've one of the best ways you can help is financially, a donation. You can go to our website at either warriorcounselingworks.org or warriorequine.net. They all go to the same place. And there's a donate now. If you're a company that wants to be a sponsor, we have a trailer that we're getting ready to wrap, and we'll put your name all over it. We travel hundreds of miles a week, and would love to tell the world about you. It's and the same ways that we're able to be contacted. You can go to the website. There's a form there, or you can email us at, like I said, cliff@warriorequine.net, or you can social media. The only thing I haven't responded to yet are smoke signals. So just about any other way. and our phone numbers are there on the website too. So you can call me. I answer the phone most of the time.
That's amazing. So you said you travel. Where are you traveling to?
Well, we literally bring the horses to the sites.
Oh.
Yeah. The veterans don't come to us; we go to them, and that's and the reason we do that is because we know what it's like to run a shelter. We know what it's like to run an operation like that. It's very expensive. So if we can bring the horses to them, one, it reduces their expense, but it also increases the stickiness of the program, where people stick with it.
Yeah.
There's no excuses. You're here, we're here, let's do this. We travel. Last year, we also we did a therapeutic riding retreat to Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Oh.
We got to do a trail ride through the Grand Teton National Park.
Oh, sign me up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're looking for more funding to be able to do more of those trips. We were blessed to have a foundation that we work with that was able to help us. We collaborated with another organization there, and it was wonderful. The guys are still talking about it, that we stay in contact with. It's a it's a beautiful thing, and we're looking at some other options. We're looking at I know your ears perked up when I started talking about doing the side pass, opening the gate. We're literally getting ready. What we're working toward is getting them to be able to do the ranch horse pattern.
Awesome. That's super.
And then we're going to create a competitive situation between different places.
Wow.
First in Texas and other places. So we're working toward that. It's a process, but
that's interesting.
we want to get this first group being able to do those things first, and see what that looks like, and but it's fun. When I'm done, with the session, it's like, this is the best job ever.
Aww.
This is the best job ever.
We've got one more question that I want to ask, and then I know we're getting towards the hour, so then we'll wrap up kind of with some final thoughts. But from Stephanie, is there medication alongside equine therapy for PTSD, or do you not use meds?
We do not prescribe medication at all. That does not mean that some of the guys we work with aren't on medication that is prescribed by a licensed primary care physician or a licensed psychiatrist. But we don't do that. That's not our licensure. I always tell people that there's all kinds of means that help us get to where we need to be. And if people who are far smarter than us feel like that's a good option for you, then you make that informed decision, because we're not going to make it for you. But I'd really love you to get to a point where you didn't need it anymore. But some people I know just from my own training, will be on some sort of psychotropic medication the rest of their life. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. I mean, it could be literally a chemical imbalance that around me. So, and one little disclaimer is just because I say our goal is to help you not have to be on medication. Never come off the medication without the doctor telling you to. If your doctor's not telling you to, or not managing it, do not come off that medication. Talk to him or her right away if that's what you want to do, and you guys work that out together. I don't care who else it is. Talk to them right away. If it's an emergency situation, get emergency medical involved. But you will never hear me tell you need to stop taking that.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Okay, one more question.
No problem.
Let's see. From Matt, are there any people who have been through the program who haven't come away affected by the horse, like how some methods of therapy are more effective in some people than others?
That's a really good question. And I will tell you that there have been some people that have come through that I was really worried about. Genuinely, because it was like, they came, they were like, the term is, I was voluntold to be here. In other words, I volunteered, but not really. And they were, they did everything you asked them to. They always, they would often question it, but they would do it, and they were like kind of going through the motions. And sometimes it was right up until that final, what we call our immersive one day, where they were still that way. But then there was something about, that time where they're literally putting all the pieces together, where they, because we have a debrief after we're done. And, we want them to be brutally honest, because I tell them, I said, our goal here is we want you to get better, but we want to be better at this too. And, I had several people in a previous group say, I hated getting, I hated starting. I didn't want to be here, and I told you that. And I would, and he would blow it off. But by the time we got to that final, he was like, "Man, I don't want this to end now." Wow. And he would come back out later. So, and there have been some people that have quit on us. So I guess you would say there are people that don't get it, and that don't stick with it. But I don't think they would have stuck with anything. I don't think it was just us, because 95, 98% are sticking in, something like that. Somewhere in the 90%, percentages are sticking with us.
Yeah. Now that makes sense. You're going to have some people who want to see it through, and others who don't, in any modality or aspect of life in general.
Yeah, I had one guy, bail the first day because he found out that he was allergic to horses.
Oh no!
So okay, can't fix that.
Yeah.
Can't fix that. Good luck. God bless. I hope something else works out for you. Because obviously, there's nothing I can do. I can't put you. I can't put you in a quarantine suit and it helps. So.
Well, incredible. This has been amazing. Just learning more about the organization, sharing it with people. If people are on here and they hadn't heard your email, can you give them your email again? And then also just the ways that they can contact you with any questions that they might have about the program or wanting to donate, anything along those lines.
Sure, absolutely. The easiest email address is Cliff, CLIFF, at warrior-equine.net. That's Cliff at warrior-equine.net. Or like I said, or you can go to the website warrior-equine.net, and there's phone numbers. There's a contact form. You can get us there. Social media, Warrior Counseling Works, Facebook, warrior.equine on Instagram, Warrior Equine on TikTok. The only thing we don't do is X, and I don't know why. We just don't have time. Um, and and yeah, we would love to talk with them. We'd love to, see how we can get involved. They can get involved. There are some people who want to start their own program, and we're working with people. We're actually doing some training this fall to help other people start their own.
Wow, that's incredible.
So because it's because what we do is different, because a lot of programs will just be um, will just be pure just therapy, where you don't really do anything with the horse. You're just kind of around them.
Interesting. Okay.
And then there's people who do therapeutic horsemanship, which is really just you're doing stuff with the horses, but there's no intentional therapy. It's not like we're trying to draw out, but we combine those two, and then we combine therapeutic riding with it, because I believe that your self-esteem is your psychological superpower.
Mm.
And talk about building somebody up from being almost afraid of horses, or being afraid of them, to being able to effectively manage a horse from the saddle.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Problem solving. I can overcome anything. I can do this. I was able to work with the 1,200-pound animal. Now I've got this small problem that's an irritant. That's nothing. I can deal with this. I'm good.
Oh, no,
So
that makes a
putting
lot.
those together, putting those together is, was just kind of one of our personal breakthroughs as a group, and it's really, to me, makes all the difference. It just puts all the pieces together. Uses the whole horse. Uses everything we can pull from them, and and we keep pushing the envelope, seeing what else we can do.
Wow. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. This has been such a good conversation. I've had a lot of questions, and hopefully get the name out there and help a lot of people, because that's what you're doing, and it's beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, and I know that you do a lot of good work too. I see, I see you out there doing what you do, and yeah, I know you impact a lot of people as well. So thank you for what you do. It's inspiring to many.
Thank you. Awesome.